The World News, the European Commission is vowing to react firmly and immediately against unjustified barriers to free and fair trade after Donald Trump said he would be announcing 25% tariffs on imports from the EU very soon. Let's take a listen.
The European Union's it was formed in order to screw the United States. I mean, look, let's be honest. The European Union was formed in order to screw the United States. That's the purpose of it. And they've done a good job of it, but now I'm president.
Well, for some reaction from Brussels, let's cross live now to France 24's Dave Keating. He's standing by for us. Dave, some tough words there from Donald Trump. EU capitals have been preparing for an announcement on tariffs. It seems like Emmanuel Macron's visit to Washington hasn't appeased Donald Trump. What is the very latest? What do we know?
Yeah, I mean, this doesn't come as a huge surprise, the announcement for these tariffs, because I think here in Brussels, everyone has expected that no matter what, these were coming, or at least the announcement of them were coming. But of course, they have watched very closely what happened with Canada and Mexico, where Trump announced these 25% blanket tariffs on all of the trade between the U.S. and those countries, but then walked it back after those countries pledged to take some fairly symbolic measures, nothing really concrete. So there's been talk here about how exactly the EU should respond given that experience with Canada and Mexico. We keep being told that the EU is prepared to immediately put into effect these retaliatory tariffs. We know last time around when Trump enacted tariffs on steel and aluminium from the EU, there were very quickly retaliatory tariffs on items of Americana, like blue jeans and whiskey, things that were seen as in particular affecting people in Trump's heartland of base supporters. This time, of course, the tariffs that he's talking about are much more significant, so the thought is the response has to be more significant. Now, that statement from the European Commission tonight in response to Trump's tariff was that Trump's threat rather, was that the EU will react firmly and immediately against unjustified barriers to free and fair trade, including when tariffs are used to challenge legal and non-discriminatory policies. So therefore suggesting that if this back and forth in terms of a trade war were to occur, that Trump, let's say the EU responds minorly, and then Trump takes that as a reason to retaliate majorly against the minor response, that the EU will then respond in kind. There's some saying that the EU should hold off on immediate retaliatory threats because of the experience with Canada and Mexico, but there are others that are saying, look, that was just a 1-month reprieve and we can't be doing this dance with the United States month after month for the next year. And also the EU has a lot more trade heft than Canada or Mexico in terms of the way it can retaliate. It can really hurt the United States in a way that Canada and Mexico would struggle to be able to do. So when these tariffs actually get announced, and I think the expectation now is this is a question of when and not if, there will be a debate about how the EU should respond, and it's unclear who's going to win that debate.
And Dave, in terms of that response, is the EU going to be speaking with one voice here? Various member states are going to be affected in a different manner to others. Some will be much more harder hit by these tariffs.
In terms of trade, it is an EU competence. The EU member states have signed treaties giving the European Commission the authority to negotiate trade on their behalf. Individual EU countries could not conclude an individual trade arrangement with the United States, even if they wanted to. They would be violating international law, EU law, if they did so. When Trump says that the EU was formed to screw the United States, it's not exactly historically accurate. The EU was formed with the encouragement of the United States. But it's also true to say that if you were just discovering the European Union now, you would see it as an impediment to U.S. power, because it is the only thing that gives individual European countries some leverage when dealing with the United States. And again, that's why the EU has so much more powder here in terms of firing back against the United States than Canada or Mexico, because it is so much bigger and because it is actually a larger single market than the United States. So it's obvious why Trump wouldn't like the European Union, because it prevents the US from having the maximum amount of power and leverage over Europeans that it would like. But the fact of the matter is, even if individual European countries wanted to break away and be disunited on the trade front, legally, treaty-wise, they can't. It is the European Commission's decision at the end of the day.
Dave, thanks so much. We'll leave it there for now. That's Dave Keating, our correspondent in Brussels. Moving on.